Hi everybody, welcome back to the new federal state of China. This is our new program starting from today called Miles Trial. As everybody knows, the trial procedures of Miles will begin today. And we're very appreciative that we have Kevin today who will bring us some updates on Miles Trial in the morning. So Kevin, say hi to our audience.
Thank you, Isla. Hi everyone, I'm Kevin and really excited to be here today.
Yeah, so special thanks to Jeremy to provide us, the special sessions on Alpha TV and all of our families on Alpha TV. Thank you so much for your support and your love and your prayers for Miles. And as everybody knows, Miles was indicted and was charged by the United States government about 12 counts, and many of these allegations were financially related, about investments, about enterprises. We will not be going over very details, but there are 12 counts, financially related counts about security fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice, also one RICO charge as well. So, Kevin, tell us a little bit about what you saw today in the morning, especially about the jury selection and how did that go? And most importantly, did you see Miles today?
So I did see Miles today, but it was over the screen. So today was jury selection day, the entire day. So it was very, very, very important, and we weren't actually allowed into the actual courtroom. So we had to watch via screen. But even then, I was able to, get a lot of insights into what was happening today. So, just to walk over in detail.
Sure.
Around 9, Miles and his lawyer team, as well as the prosecutors, they got into the courtroom. And Miles, he looked very healthy, very, bright, very, very sharp and attentive. And he was wearing a gray suit, white shirt, and also black belt. He also shaved today. And then after that, he kept talking with his lawyers, and he was just constantly communicating with them throughout the waiting period. And then afterwards, around 10:15 a.m., the judge, Annalisa Torres, she entered the room, and everyone stood up. And then after that, there was a bit more of waiting, and then around 10:40, all the potential jury candidates walked in. And so one is sat in the gallery, and then the judge took the oath with them. And then from there, they were given their juror numbers. And then around 11, the judge...
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
So they were given about the jury numbers.
Yeah.
So the public does not know about the names of the jurors, right?
Yeah.
And how did that, jury number arrange? Was it from 1 to 10 or like 1 to 100?
Yeah, so there was 100 jurors, so it was arranged from 1 to 100. And it was basically just each person was introduced as number 1, number 2, number 3. Yeah. And then, so after that, at around 11, the judge introduces herself and the jury selection process to all of the jurors at her stand. And then she also went through each of the 12 charges in just name by name, as well as mentioning what they were. And then that finished at 11:10, and then she starts the official, questioning process. And she first started with the general questions to the jury. And so the first one was about their health, if they had any existing health concerns that would prevent them from attending the trial, the entirety of the trial. And so here, if any juror raised their hand, the judge would privately call them to her table, along with the prosecutors as well as Miles's lawyers, and then they would privately discuss whether or not they would be excused. Okay. And then, so this happened one by one, and it took a while, but each time a juror went up and walked past Miles would always just be smiling, looking at them like sort of like a tennis match, right? Like looking back and forth. So that was good. He was very attentive, and I heard he woke up at 4 or 5 today.
Wow.
And he waited in the courtroom for about 2 or 3 hours while it was, we were just waiting for everything, and he was still very sharp, focused. Just always stood at the front. He didn't really look around. So that's very good.
And then, when the juror came to the judge's table and then talked to Miles' lawyer's team and then the prosecution team, was the conversation private or was the conversation public?
Yeah, so it was completely private. We couldn't actually see anything on the screen, and I would assume it's private because it's personal. Their personal reason why they cannot attend the entirety of the trial due to some reason. So each time, each question, there was also a lot of jurors that raised their hand. So for example, after that round of questions, the first one, the health one, ended. Then the next one at around 11:30, the judge asked the juror if there was any problems with understanding English, and so then the same process happened. The jurors raised their hands, and if there were any concerns, the judge would talk to each of them privately. And then same thing, Miles was always just looking back and forth, very focused and attentive, always smiling. And then after that, there was another question, if the jurors have any problem with interpreting the translations, if they spoke a different language. And so same process happened. And then the last question was if the jurors would have any problem with the length of the trial. So in the beginning, the judge told the jurors that the trial was estimated to last about 7 weeks.
Okay.
And she also said that it could last longer. It's just an estimate. And then so once she asked that question, everybody just suddenly raised their hands. There was about, I want to say like 30 probably. That was the most hands raised out of any question so far. And so then that was even a longer wait, because every juror has to come up and talk to the judge and the lawyers, right? And then that ended around 12:50 p.m. And then the judge called a break until 2 p.m. So around an hour break for Miles, the lawyers, prosecutors, and everyone else as well. And so after 100 jurors that first entered the courtroom at 9 this morning, 51 were excused. So only 49 were left. Yeah. So as you can see, just a couple hours and already more than half the jurors, potential juror candidates, are already gone. So this shows just how lengthy this process might be.
Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. We have been observing some of the numbers right there, right? And the question that the judge asked was only about some general questions,
exactly,
right? Health questions, concerns related to the length of the trial. And their language ability of understanding the trial. And, it shows us that, the jury selection process might take longer than what we expected, right? And then is there, just right before the jury enters, did the judge also give any other briefings other than allegations about Miles? Did the judge, mention about any other information about his case?
No. The only thing, or she told the prosecution, the lawyer, Miles' lawyers, was basically just to, be respectful to the court employees, and that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so during the process, or at least during the hours that you observed the court today, that Miles did not speak publicly, right? He only spoke with his defense team, and then it was between his defense team, prosecution, and the judge talked to the juror, right?
That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
He did not actually speak today.
Yeah. Okay, great. And thank you so much, Kevin, for giving us an update. It sounds to me that it was a very intense morning and lots of waiting as well, right? Lots of the time were actually private conversations. And so today, how do you feel about the Southern District of New York? Were there lots of reporters outside, or were there many people in the same room watching this, jury selection with you?
Yeah. So there were a bunch of people in the jury selection room, and as for reporters, I personally didn't run into any, but I did hear, people saying that there were.
Great. So, people have been caring about Miles and then supporting him throughout the case as well. From the proceedings in this morning, we've understand that, the judge's previous order did came in effect that all of the jurors today are anonymous. They were given as a number, so no one in, none of us will actually get to know, who the jurors are. And it sounds to me that, in the afternoon that the process will still take longer. And do you happen to know when the court will resume this afternoon, and then when it will complete today? Yeah.
So when the judge Annalisa Torres, she was introducing the jury selection process to everyone, she mentioned that for the jury selection process, it would begin from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, and once that finishes, the actual trial, it would run from 9:30 to 2:45 every day.
Okay, great. So the jury selection actually takes longer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look on the NFSC Speaks X account. So, throughout the trial and starting from today, the new federal state of China did, share certain updates through, people who actually observe, the courtroom, and they will be giving these updates to us. And so we're very appreciative of their, hard works and their travels to the courtroom as well. So, let's take a look at the NFSC and X account, and while we're waiting for that account to, appear on the screen, Kevin, let me ask you, okay, perfect. Let's take a look on all of the updates today. So as you can tell, Miles' trial update has been pinged in the account, and then all of have now returned to the courtroom and to resume the jury selection process. Now, after the break, Miles was wearing a light color tie. I know there were some discussions about whether Miles wear a tie this morning, but we knew that, from Kevin, we knew that, he was in a gray shirt, he was in gray suit, white shirt, and then a black belt and a black shoes as well. So, Kevin, tell us a little bit, how did that feel from watching the courtroom actually through a screen? So, were you actually be able to actually see everything through the computer, or it was a very limited angle and very limited, image quality? Yeah,
so it was actually a very limited portion of the courtroom. From there, we could only see we couldn't even see the judge stand. We could only see the prosecutor table. It was a second row, and then Miles's lawyers, which was a third row, and then we could see a bit of the juror gallery, but that was it. So it was very limited. Yeah.
Yeah, so, as you can tell, right, 100 juror candidates and then prosecution team, defense team, it would only, allow very limited spaces actually in the courtroom for people to actually watch, the proceedings. So I would assume that, in any other later proceedings, there might be also very limited spaces for public spectator as well. But, probably after the jury selection, when the jurors were decided, there may be more spaces for public and to actually view the proceedings. So again, all of these updated will be shared, and then we would encourage everybody to actually read the court documents, to actually understand from public legal documents about the trial. I'm pretty sure that there are also pending requests from government and from the defendant as well that will be determined by judge throughout this process. And I'm pretty sure, Mr. Guo will be having very great spirits and high confidence in the upcoming schedules as well. So, Kevin, tell us a little bit about just your personal experience, right? Have you ever actually been into a court and observe a criminal proceedings or observe any other jury selections in the past?
No, actually, this was my first time. It was very interesting to see. I was really excited today to actually witness, the greatness of the U.S. justice system. And even though I also never experienced it in China, I'm sure it's probably nothing like this. Like today was just a really good example of how how much of a process you have to follow in the jury selection process, which happened today, as well as just the trial in general. Right.
So for everybody, who was not familiar about Chinese, justice system, I'll give you one example, right? If you think about Miles, he himself and his families and the employees that worked with him in his Chinese business, there was a trial a couple years ago in Dalian City in China when, the Chinese Communist Party government actually seized all of, Mr. Guo's businesses and assets in mainland, and his employees were actually detained. And when they went on trial, there were policemen who actually, stood behind these employees and used the guns to put at them. So all of the clothes with, Mr. Guo's employees in China, their clothes were actually predetermined by the government. Same clothes, same shirts, and people were actually reading scripts that were from the Chinese Communist Party. And just comparing to what we saw today, right? What you saw today, that in the jury selection, it strictly follows the rules and the guidelines from the judge and from the justice system.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't even think I saw any policemen in there. The only I guess security I saw was maybe a couple of court security officers, maybe like one or two. That was it, and there was no handcuffs, no guns for sure. It was just very proper, and very civilized.
Right, exactly, and that's something that the Chinese Communist government never has, and in its own country and in the nation. And so we do appreciate, Kevin, about your perspectives, because lots of people here online and also who are waiting for maybe Chinese translation of the program and then another Chinese program afterwards are waiting to hear updates from the trial. So Kevin, tell us how you think about the jurors. Were they lawyers? How do they dress like? And then were they obviously they're anonymous, we will not be able to see, but were they all Chinese, or were they all American, regular American citizens? Were they in specific races, or was it kind of like just regular day-to-day people that you saw?
Yeah, so from what I saw from the very limited portion of the screen, from what I understand too, the jurors are randomly selected from Southern District of New York, and I saw that it was very diverse. There was middle-aged people as well as some senior people as well, and also very young people. I would say maybe 20s, 30s, and as for races, it was like a mix, like a melting pot of races.
Right.
I think it truly does represent like New York, I think, as a whole. There was like black, white, Chinese, like everything, right? And then it just shows to how I guess efficient or effective the U.S. justice system is here, and so it just makes it much more beneficial as well for Miles.
Right.
That there's such a diverse viewpoint, right?
Right. So with all of these diversity in the jurors, right, there are also specific requirements to actually ensure a transparency and the justice for and the fairness, for both the defendant and the government. And if people, go back to reveal certain court documents in the public docket, there are some sample questions that were meant to actually ask and to examine whether a juror was qualified to actually be a juror. So Kevin, do you know how many jurors that Miles will, be, essentially how many jurors that he will have, and that will there be any other alternatives?
Yeah. So from what I understand, the Miles lawyers team and the prosecution will choose 12 actual jurors, as well as 6 alternative jurors out of the 200, and there's also that's 18 in total, right?
Okay.
And then after that, there's also going to be, how Miles's lawyers team also has 10 chances to remove a juror for no reason at all, and the prosecution team has 6, so that's another 16. So 16 plus 18 is 34, right? And then you also have to have another 6 alternative juror candidates, so that makes it 40. So from what I was told, you would need about 40 jurors out of the 200, but if out of the 200, you can't, or you didn't choose the full 40, then there would be more juror candidates coming. And so we can just see from today, right? There's only like less than half of the 100 left.
Right.
And those only the general questions, like 4 questions, right? 4 general questions were asked to the jury, and so we can see just from that today, it's going to be quite a lengthy process.
Right. So originally, we would expect that the jury selection will probably takes only a couple of days, but it sounds to me that with the 40 out of 200, and then with going to all of the detailed questions, it might take a week or even more to complete the jury selection.
And I mean, it's also Miles's case is also very publicized, right? There's a lot of media attention as well, so it's definitely going to take a while.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you can tell, right, it is a very complex, proceedings, very complex procedures, and everybody here in the new federal state of China are now learning, the process of the United States justice system. You were also reading court documents, hearing from people who actually be in the court and bring us back the observations and the perspectives, and we're highly appreciative of this. So, Kevin, tell us a little bit about, your experience in the Southern District of New York. So obviously, it was not the first time that Miles actually went into SD, Southern District. that actually, in 2021, there are cases in Southern District, New York, that Miles went on for depositions, and in the past years, he has multiple cases, right? That cases requires him to actually appear in the court, giving out testimony or being deposed, in front of other defendants as well. So how do you think of, in terms of his mentality, and then, just from what you see from the screen, how do you feel about his spirits and mentality today? Is there anything different, from, what you saw in the grand broadcast that he did years ago?
So today, it was my first time ever seeing him in a court, basically almost in the same room. And he was very, very composed. I heard and I followed up with the cases from before as well, and how he was always very bright, very smiling, right, and attentive. And I can 100% say that was the same case as today. He was very focused, even though you could not even tell he woke up at 4 a.m. this morning, and he was just staring straight ahead, always focused, always looking back and forth at the jurors when they went up, smiling. And you could tell he's very seasoned. He's a professional, basically, sitting in trials. And there was nothing that you could tell was off at all.
Exactly. And then, people were caring about his mentality, right? And especially for people who actually have been in such journey and such challenge, lots of people actually lose their mentality throughout the, process. And Miles is definitely not that case. Miles is a fighter, a real fighter, and a fighter of taking down the Chinese Communist Party, right? As we all know. So we're happy to hear that he is, very high-spirited and very focused and very attentive. And it sounds to me that, all of his focus and energy are now used in the legal process and to actually learn and observe and to understand and to talk to his legal team. And how does, his defense team look like today? Were they talking to Miles a lot, or, is there any interaction that you observed between Miles and his defense team?
Yeah, so as I said before, there was definitely a lot of waiting today. And I was very impressed because Miles was always same position, just straight like this, just straight ahead, and it was very impressive. Not many people can do that for 2 hours straight at one time. And of course, also during the waiting periods, Miles and his lawyers would constantly talk. I think there were about 4 lawyers today at his table, and he would be talking to each one at separate times, and the conversation seemed very very intimate. Miles was always smiling as well. He was laughing, and the lawyers were also laughing, and it was a very close conversation between each one of them.
Right, and you won't be able to hear, right? Because it's privileged, obviously. But just from one single detail that Miles was laughing and his defense team was laughing, I could already imagine that Miles was trying to having everybody relaxed from the intensity of the process, from the intensity of this legal process. It was always him. It was his personal kind of like magic of bringing laughter and bringing happiness to people around him.
Yeah, and there's also 2 things I want to mention. First, he was talking to them without a translator completely, so full English.
Right.
So and he was just talking to them for one time he was talking to them for 10-15 minutes straight, and so without having to use a translator, you can just see how much his English has improved. Just from learning English.
Maybe better than yours.
It would be amazing if it was. Yeah, and then the second thing I want to bring up is that. As I mentioned earlier, the conversations were very intimate. They were the lawyers were always touching hand behind the back or hand on the arm, and same for Miles as well. So you can just see how close the relationship between him and his lawyers are.
Right, exactly. And then when just from your description, right, we could already see the images, or even feel like that we are actually in the courtroom to see that, to see what happened with Miles and his defense team. And the fact that you said that Miles was able actually to communicate with his defense team without a translator was very impressive to everybody. And everybody knows that, Miles works very hard to learn English. And then even years ago that Miles was trying very hard to actually be in broadcast and speak English directly to all of the guests and hosts on Western media as well. And so it was very impressive to hear that, and he was always learning. no matter what challenges or what situations that put him in. So it was very, very impressive to hear that. And I would be expecting that Miles sitting here and then interviewing Kevin next time.
Yeah, I'm sure his English has improved quite a lot. I think everyone will be very surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kevin, because you are not actually in the courtroom, were there a lot of people actually in the Southern District, New York today? When you arrived at the court, were there long lines of people waiting to coming into the court, or was it a fast process for you?
Well, so I arrived there around 8, and around 8 there was a decent amount of people. I had to wait in line to get past security. But otherwise, it was a very smooth process. Went through security, put away my electronics because there was no phones allowed, and then went straight up to the courtroom.
Exactly, and then I was actually not in the court today. And then I was informed by our tech team that there are some new updates that they would like to share with us as we speak. So let's see. Judge asked the remaining jury candidates if they are familiar with or heard of certain entities and witnesses related to this case. All of the candidates confirmed to be unfamiliar with these entities and witnesses. So that seems to be a positive news for shortening certain jury selection process, because as a juror to a criminal proceedings, especially with entities and witnesses that were related to the allegations, related to this case, to ensure the rights of the defendants and the rights of the government, that the jurors should not actually be having any ties with all of these entities and potential witness as well. So it's a good news to hear. At least we have some updates from the court. So Kevin, tell us a little bit, how you actually view and learn this process. Obviously, you are not a lawyer. You are also not actually learning in the law school. But just for people who are outside, the legal world, and to view this process, what did you learn, and how do you observe that? How was it? How should people take knowledge and take experience out of your observation and all of these proceedings?
Yeah, well, I mean, throughout the entire trial today, everything was explained in detail by the judge about what happened during the course of the jury selection and the trial onwards. And so like you mentioned, I've never been in a courtroom. I'm not learning law, right? And it was very I would say it was a very smooth learning experience for me, and everyone else as well too. Most of those that were with me did not have this experience before, and so it was just a very smooth first learning experience. And I'm also going there tomorrow, so I'm excited to see as well how it progresses.
Right. Were there any difficulties for people who are actually outside legal world to understand the procedures, or was it explained in very details, and was it explained to you very obviously?
Yeah. Well, it was explained to us very obviously because, like I mentioned before, the jurors were also just chosen out of the Southern District of New York, and most of them looked like average people as well, right? I assume that might be the first time they've also ever been in a courtroom, and so obviously the judge and all the other court employees would also have to do the same, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, for everybody, no matter whether you are actually in the courtroom like Kevin or like Isla that not being in the courtroom, we will be able to actually taking out, knowledge and experience and understanding of United States legal justice system as well, from Guo's case. So, again, all of the court cases are public, and we encourage everybody to actually view the court documents independently and to see how the judge actually ordered everything pre-trial, and then how the jury selection will be conducted, and then how that the trial will go on. So Kevin, starting from this week, right? If it's a 7-week trial, it sounds to me that the trial will last until summertime this year. Did the judge ever mention about any other potential possibility of that, adjusting the length of the trial, or maybe it will take longer, or maybe it will be less than 7 weeks?
Yeah, so she mentioned 7 weeks, and she said, I think it would end July 12th, if I remember correctly. But she also did mention as well there were some dates, I'm assuming holidays, that were court is not in session. For example, next Monday, which is
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day, yeah, that's a holiday, and some other dates in June as well, and then July. And as for, I guess, extensions or even maybe shorter trials. She didn't mention exactly, but she did state in the beginning that there's a possibility it will be shorter or longer.
Right. So 7 weeks is kind of like an estimation that the judge gives to the public today. So we will not be saying that, upon a certain time that the judge will close or judge will resume. But, it sounds to us, it's not a simple trial or a very short trial where people just go in for one or 2 days. So we're praying for Miles, obviously, and then we're hoping that, all of the people, who actually observe and care about his case would actually learn, certain knowledges and understand more about the justice system out of it. And so, Kevin, and just in terms of, because none of the questions were actually being asked to Miles today, right? Yeah. All of the questions were asked to the jurors. How did the prosecution team or the government team, look like today? Do they talk privately to Miles' defense team without the judge, or all of their interaction today was only about the juror between them and the judge?
So all the interaction today, officially was when the judge asked the juror private questions. So the juror and the Miles' lawyers, as well as the prosecution, would walk with the judge up to her stand, and then they would discuss there. And then as for the small interactions, for example, they were all very polite to each other. I know Miles' lawyers were like gesture like, "Oh, please go first," stuff like that. So just very polite, small, kind gestures, and this just shows how civilized everyone is.
Right. And then how many prosecutors were in the courtroom today? Was the entire team, or was it only 1 or 2 prosecutors?
From what I remember, there was only 4 prosecutors.
Okay.
Two main ones.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it sounds to us that both from teams from both sides, right? Government and the defendant has actually been gathered starting from day 1 to the trial. And then, as you mentioned, next Monday the court will not be holding any jury selections. So just in your own opinions, based on your observation this morning, what update or how much progress do you think that we would be able to actually see this week?
So we still have tomorrow as well as Friday, 2 more days, from 9 to 5 each. And based on the recent update we just got about how the witnesses and the certain questions, I think it might actually go faster than expected. Don't quote me on that. But I think I'm hopeful it won't take too long.
Yeah.
But things are looking good if the general questions are getting out of the way. And moving on to the more personal questions.
Right. So, after the close of the jury selection today, we will actually be able to know more accurate numbers about how many jurors were actually excused today, right? And if the judge needs more candidates to come in tomorrow or maybe Friday. So it sounds to us that the question now shifts to the relevance of between the jurors and the case material, right? So it shows a good sign that more detailed questions has been asked and have been examined among the jurors. So we're hoping, as what Kevin hopes, that the jury selection could be shortened so that more energies and more time can be focused for the defendant, for Miles, and for everybody to focus on the actual trial proceedings. Yeah, exactly. So Kevin, tell us a little bit, when you were in there and you were actually, being with other people, whether they are familiar with New Federal State of China or not, right? And they are actually viewing the jury selection via the screen. Was it, a very quiet process, or were there people, talking about the case or asking questions? How was viewing the process with everybody?
Yeah, the viewing the process with everyone was very smooth. It was very quiet, especially when the court session was on. Everyone was just very quiet, focused on the screen, not talking, not being loud, and it was just, like I mentioned, very civilized. And sometimes during breaks, there was talking, just discussing, what happened here or stuff like that. But overall, it was just very civilized. Right.
And then, how did everybody dress like? Did you wear a suit, or was everybody, in very official looks today?
Yeah. So there was very diverse. Some people were dressing business casual, like me. Some were in full suits with a tie, and some were also in polos as well. And so it was just very, I would say, professional. There's no one in t-shirts or anything. It was full on business casual, business professional, stuff like that.
Right. So, it was also, an etiquette, right? A dress code for everybody who wants to go to the court and actually, view, the proceedings. And so the court is public, right? And obviously that there are only limited spaces for public spectators. So how large was the room that you were viewing? Was it a room that can hold up to like hundreds of people, or was it a small conference room, that can only, have, maybe, 10 or 20 people today?
Yeah. So the room I was in, we were only allowed to sit in the juror gallery. And so those are like the benches in rows, and then there's multiple screens around so we could look at that. I would estimate maybe around, I want to say max 100 people in the room, including standing.
Right.
So it's not very big. So as you said, there's very limited amount of spots for spectators.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, just with, the court itself, right? And obviously we want a good environment for Miles to prepare and to be focused on his trial and his case as well. So we would encourage everybody to, to be very cautious about whether you actually go to the trial, go to see the court or not. And so, Kevin, just from, your experience and your knowledge about New Federal State of China and the whistleblowers movement, do you think that people will, learn more about the justice system out of the trial, or do you think that Miles' case will actually cause, further impact in the justice system as well?
100%. I think just watching this entire trial take place will help the average person learn a lot about how the U.S. justice system works, and how how much it hinges on fairness and equality and equity, and it also shows just how different this in stark contrast it is to the CCP's justice system, and how you mentioned how there's guns in court, which is very unprofessional, completely different to the Western world. And I think that this court case will expose a lot of what NFSC has been doing to the average person, against the CCP, trying to expose their evil deeds and what they've been doing, such as their 13579 plan, how they released the COVID-19 virus, vaccines, and many evil stuff.
Right. So we're obviously looking forward to hearing more updates from the court, right? And for anyone who is curious about how much progress that has been made pre-trially, we encourage everybody to actually go on nfscofficial.com to actually view the court updates. As far as I'm concerned that there are still certain requests from governments that are still pending the decision from the judge. It seems to us that lots of the discussion among the government today was related to the witness or so-called victim who were allegedly calling themselves as victim of the investments and victim of the activities or so. And so lots of debates and lots of the conversations were actually related to the witness, whether their testimony is privileged because of their positions as lawyers, or whether these victims' testimony can be included in the further trial. So again, lots of the details today, and then thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing the information with us. We're hoping to actually see more updates, right, this afternoon, and tell us a little bit, about just your physical feelings of sitting in the room and watching the screen for like 4 hours or 5 hours this morning. How did that feel to you, about just sitting there and watching it and trying to memorize everything?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, it's definitely not easy to do, just sitting there in one spot for 4 hours straight, I would say. And the fact that Miles was able to do that, he didn't even take any
with
washing
straight
breaks.
backs, right?
Straight back. I can tell you those chairs are not very comfortable for sure. And he was just sitting there, just in one spot, never moved from his spot, never went to the washroom, just had a couple drinks of water. It's very, very, I want to say it's very tough. I don't think the average person can do that, but that just shows you how strong, how resilient his mental is, just how strong physically he is as well, and how much experience he has sitting in court. And so I think that's very, very impressive, and it's very beneficial for his case as well.
Right, and so when you imagine about Miles' days, when he has trials, he needs to wake up like 4 or 5, and then he will be in the court around 8. I would assume because the court starts at 9, right? And then they only completes at 5, and he might also have other legal meetings with his defense team. So it sounds to me that he will be having very packed days, now that the trial has begun.
Yeah, I can only imagine how little sleep he's getting. And so just the mental capacity and resilience to be able to sleep that little, focus on court while in session, and also focus on court documents and having conversations with lawyers afterwards. That's just, that places a lot of stress and, a lot of that needs a lot of mental strength.
Right, exactly. And, and for everybody who has been in that process, right? And I'm pretty sure it's the same for Miles' defense team as well, right? It's a group work, and it's a challenge that the new federal state of China faces, and also, Miles himself faces as well. So again, we're very thankful and appreciative with his defense team as well. They have been working very hard, relentlessly, day to day with Miles about his defense, and all of the works that they have done in the past was for today, for the trial, and for all of the later proceedings. So we're really hoping that there are much more progress that we can see, and then we're hoping for the best and the most positive results for Miles himself as well. And so so Kevin, it sounds to me that like the judge and the prosecution team was actually not talking about their opinions or their views about the case at all today. It was very straightforward. It was only focused about the jury selection, right? Am I correct?
Yes, 100%.
Right, and then with Miles and his defense team, it seems to us like all of the efforts now were only focused about the juror candidates, and so when the juror were excused, they were actually would they be advised to leave the court, or would they still be kept in the room and everybody was excused at the same time? Yeah,
so I was only there until before the break, and from what I understood, those that were excused had to give in their juror number tags to the I would assume the court clerk or bailiff for them to leave the building.
I see.
And then only the ones that were left at the time I left, around 49 jurors, they were just asked to go on a break for lunch.
I see. And just so for everybody understands, right, there is a previous order related to the jury selection, and the judge did decide that the jury will be kept anonymous at all times, and every day when they arrive at court and when they leave the court, they will be accompanied by marshals, and all of the jury meetings that they will potentially have, later in the future, will be a designated third-party area, not in the courtroom, just to ensure, the transparency and the security and the safety of the juror team as well. So we do encourage, everybody to get a little bit more sense about this process, so you will be able to actually read the court very easily, after the trial actually starts. And so, Kevin, just being in the courtroom for just one single day, right? Is there any other impressive, observations that you would like to share with us, other than, how Miles, look, and then how strong that his mentality is?
I mean, other than that, for me personally, it was like my first time being inside a courthouse. First time, and it was a very impressive building. Everything was so clean. And the courthouses are nothing like what you see on TV, especially when actually going into the courtroom. And so I was just impressed with how official, how civilized everything was. From this going in, pass through security, handing phones, all the way, going up to the elevator, going into the courtroom. It was very structured and very civilized.
Right, exactly. And I was informed again, by our tech team in a back room, and tell us that they have some new updates from the court as well. So let's see what it is. A judge asked the jury candidates to raise their hands if they feel strongly towards Trump administrations, and consultants like Steve Bannon or Peter Navarro. Some of the candidates raised their hands, and the judge and both legal teams will confirm with these candidates. So it sounds to us like there are some private conversations that are being conducted as of this moment. And the question now shifts towards about their political stance about the current and the previous government, right? About whether Trump administration, former President Trump and consultant Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro would actually have any impact of their political views or their attitudes towards the case. So. Kevin, obviously, this is a more specific questions other than health, other than the entirety of the trial. And how do you, when people were actually being put on trial in China, none of these questions were being asked to the defendant or to the government, right? And there was not even a jury process. And so when you saw that, just one single question that was being asked to the jurors, what's your reaction and how do you read from that?
First, it's no surprise that people raise their hands. Trump, Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro, very very big names, very famous in American media, so not surprised there. And as for the process itself, just showing how truthful the jurors are as well, just shows to everyone the fairness of the American justice system. And like you said, it doesn't happen in CSV China. From what I assume, the result is already decided even before court starts. It's just a show. So the fact that this process can happen right now for the trial, it just shows how fair the system is here in America.
Right. And when you actually see that question, right, and the problem today is that there are potentially testimony or evidences or even case briefings that will be related to the big names that you just mentioned, and this was primarily why about that the jurors need to be asked, because they need to ensure a fairness view, a fair examination of all of the evidences or witnesses or testimonies that they will potentially be seeing. So again, it seems to me that more of these mysterious thoughts about the upcoming trial now came up, and then people can learn more about these questions as well. So obviously, Kevin, you yourself, will not be able to be the juror, right? Because you know Miles, and you have a political stance, not just the Trump government. I would assume that some other questions will be asking to the jurors about whether they have a strong attitude against Chinese government or Chinese Communist Party. So again, we will thank to our team of bringing these new information to us. And as we can see, the question list keeps piling up. So it did see some positive progress of the jury selection there.
100%, yeah. It seems like the jury selection process is moving much faster in the afternoon, which is always a good sign. And there's going to be more general questions, probably a few left, and then they'll be moving on to the personal questions. And from there, it'll probably get narrowed down much more. Right,
exactly. And so just based on the question, we will be able to actually tell a little bit about how fast the process or how slow the process is. And just from the case briefing that you mentioned today, it sounds to me that there was a bit delay in this morning, because it was supposed to start at 9, but it sounds to me that lots of people are waiting, and then the official process takes an hour later to actually start. So in the first hour, while you were waiting and everyone else was waiting, was there any interaction between Miles and judge and the prosecution team, or people was just purely waiting for the delay?
During the delay, it was mainly just the prosecution team talking to themselves. The judge was on the screen, and Miles was just talking back and forth with his lawyers, like I mentioned earlier, laughing, having conversations with every single one. They would go back and forth as well. So that was basically it.
Right. So even though that on the court document it marks that the selection will begin on 9 until 5. Much of the time will actually be on some technical issues or other delays. So we saw some updates today, and we're hoping to hear more about the numbers, whether more jurors are excused today, and so that we could probably estimate of how many more jurors candidates will be examined tomorrow as well. And so Kevin, just teach me, because I did not go to the court today, right? And let's say, if certain jurors were excused today as well after the questions, with the new juror candidates came in, do they start from the beginning? Do they start from broad questions again and then narrow down to detailed questions?
From what I assume that yes, the new jurors, when I last left, the judge announced that there were 75 new jurors waiting downstairs. So I assume that if of the 49 that were left, probably less now because of the new questions that were asked.
Right.
There'll probably be less, and then afterwards, this new 75 would be moved upstairs, and then I assume, the
it will go back to general questions again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds to us it's a very strict and then a very standard process for each juror candidate as well.
Yeah.
And so let's see if this afternoon we will be able to actually have more numbers from the court, and we did hope that the jury selection will not exhaust everyone else in the court today.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a lengthy jury selection process, but things are looking up so far.
Right, and so just for everybody knows that our show about the Miles trial updates will be on LFA TV and Getter starting from Monday to Friday at 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so for every episode, we will be inviting people who actually go into the courtroom and an outsider to ask questions and share perspectives and observations. Sometimes obviously we will also be giving certain documents share and news updates as well. So please follow us on Alpha TV at NFSC Speaks as well, and then go look and then reveal all of our updates and the information sharing on our NFSC Speaks Twitter account. It did show you the court update from time to time, and all of these briefings will be consulted with legal team as well, and we will be correcting if there are mistakes on the next day, and again people will also be reading the court documents and giving out more information about his trial. Yeah, so Kevin, you actually arrived, this was not actually the first time that you worked with the new federal state of China, but it is your first time to work, things that are legal related, and so how do you feel just personally as, a young generation, how do you feel about your initial experience going into kind of like certain legal works and understanding the process?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned a lot throughout this entire process, just as well prepping for visiting the trial, reading through the documents and everything. And actually in the trial itself, it's just a very, positive learning experience for me. And just, it's also a very big milestone for me as well, getting to almost see Miles in person. And I really, really enjoyed it today, even though it was tiring, but I feel that it's worth it.
Right, exactly. And then, for everyone, right, I assume the majority of us actually do not have any legal experiences in our life. And this is actually, a time for everybody to actually learn what rule of law is and what a standard process of a justice procedure is, and how people in the United States were actually being granted of the rights to defend for themselves when a trial came up. You could only imagine that, that people were actually being able to defend for themselves in Western countries, in countries where communist government was not ruling over, right? Because in China, like you said, right, it's almost a show because everything was predetermined, and it was almost a process that to demonstrate to the public that there are still rule of law. So was it prearranged today?
100% not. 100% not. It's just, it was, as you can tell, I mean, just based on like the speed and the delays, definitely was not arranged today.
Right, exactly. And so, this was, something that Chinese people never have, back in their homeland, right? And this was primarily why lots of Chinese people fled away from communist China and chose to live in foreign countries, because even when challenges came up, even when journeys were not easy for them, that they still have the rights and have the space to defend themselves, like Miles. And we are very happy to actually hear from Kevin today about Miles, updates about his mentality, that he is, he dressed very neat, very professional, and then and talking to his legal defense team very intimately. And these are all very positive updates for everybody. So we will continue to pray for Miles and his families every day. In fact, that May is very sentimental and very different for Miles and his families. That his daughter and his wife were actually released in May back in several years ago in 2017 as well. And his daughter and his wife was actually be able to fly from communist China to the United States. Being accompanied by the CCP officials, and the FBI at that time were actually stopped the CCP officials from arresting Miles in the United States. And this is how the United States saved Miles' family at the first time as well. So May was, the month of May is very, very sentimental and a very important month for Miles as well. And so we do pray for him. We pray for his families, and we also pray for the new federal state of China of our mission to take down the Chinese Communist Party. So Kevin, any of last words to our audience today? And I'm pretty sure you gained many more fans here on LFA TV.
Yeah, I mean, definitely please keep paying attention to the trial. It's very important, even if it does not seem to you that it may be important. I trust me, it's very important to the future of America, future of the Western world. Basically, should be the trial of the century, I would say, just based on how the result of this trial will affect everything else going forward regarding the new federal state of China and the CCP.
Exactly. And then, I will quote on your words, right? It's the trial of the century, and it's the trial of whether, of how, the new federal state of China's next chapter as well. Yeah. So thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us today and for sharing so much precious information for us. I would assume that we will see you pretty often, in the next coming days and coming weeks as well. And thank you so much, for our back team, who have been updating information, sharing latest news from the court. And we do encourage everybody to independently review the court documents and to verify, how that affects Miles' trial and how that, gives you more insights about the new federal state of China. And please do pay attention to the later outcome, and then the updates, and then the overall general legal process. We will be fighting with NFSC. We will be fighting with Miles to take down the Chinese Communist Party as always. So thank you, our LFA TV families, and shout out to Jeremy for giving our this special segment and allowing us to speak on behalf of NFSC and to share this information with you.